Chapter 17. Light in the Tunnel. The radio played softly, tuned to a local musical station. I looked at the embroidery in my hands and was amazed at the progress I had made on the bedspread. The purple was good with the yellow and white. The news announcer's voice penetrated my consciousness. From the state capitals, this story. The California Supreme Court has voted 6-1 to abolish the death penalty in the state, citing cruel and unusual punishment. That's as much as I heard before the words repeated in my mind. Voted to abolish the death penalty in the state. That's us. A loud voice came from Leslie's direction. That's us. No gas chamber. Her voice choked. Pat was talking loudly. I couldn't piece together what she was saying. Almost unconsciously, I felt myself slipping off my bed toward the floor. I was on my knees, and the tears came. In seconds, the sobs were rising from deep in my chest, and I was weeping audibly, not loudly, but openly. And for the first time since my mother's death, I spoke to God. I remember distinctly. I called him God, not Father or Lord. It was only 2 short sentences. Thanks, God. I want to thank you for letting me live. And all the others, too. I stayed on my knees for several minutes. There were no interruptions. I'm certain that all across California at that moment, similar scenes were taking place. I merely stared at the blanket on my bed and then at the embroidery. They can't kill me, I said to myself. They can't kill me. I've got a whole life ahead of me. What will happen now? Death Row sprang into life. All 5 of us talked at once. Even the staff joined in. For the first time in 2 years, I heard real joy and happiness in the voices of Pat and Leslie. All the cynicism and bitterness seemed gone. Their laughter had a tinkle to it. I told you they weren't going to kill you. It was Claire talking from across the corridor. I told you it would eventually be abolished. She was right. She had spoken often as our jailhouse lawyer, but I had never paid any attention to her. I had fully expected to die, and I was surprised at the impact the news had on me. The relief was almost palpable in SSU. All of us babbled and laughed. Now they'll have to put us on mainline, Claire said. That was an unexpected thought. Hey, yeah, said Leslie. They can't keep us in here now. We'll get out with the others. I wonder what kind of jobs we'll get, said Jennifer. And that was something else to think about. New vistas were opening in rapid succession. We'd be able to hold jobs and not sit in our cells all day and night. Late that afternoon, I lay in my bed, staring at the cream-colored ceiling, and once again my thoughts began at the center of my life. Me. But then moved in circles, around and around, before drifting out towards someone, something else. Yes, it was God. What about God? Why had this happened to me today? It was just like other times in the past, when I probably should have died. Why didn't I die? When I was just a baby, I became very sick. The diagnosis was scarlet fever, and the doctor told my parents I might die, but it turned out to be measles, and I recovered. When I was 4 years old, I was riding in the back of a car between my father and my aunt. We were crossing the Golden Gate Bridge when we were struck on the head by a truck. I was the only one to escape without a bruise. There were the times when I was stoned out of my mind on grass or acid, driving up and down the California freeways at 90 and 100 miles per hour. I should have been killed, but I wasn't. There was the crazy time of delivery of my baby, and I survived. And now this. 9 people in their graves for whom I was partly responsible. My life was spared again. The swirling increased in my mind, and I was unable to concentrate. Everything was mixed up. I was full of hate and bitterness, yet I was alive. I blinked my eyes, and the ceiling came into focus again. What day is it? I thought. February 18th, 1972. Within 3 weeks, Claire and Jennifer were moved out of SSU in their first step toward life on the mainline campus. What about us? Pat, Leslie, and I said, almost in chorus to the staff that day. We're told you will not be moved. The watchwoman said evenly, despite her obvious discomfort. You're too great an escape risk. You're too famous. Boom. The curses and epithets thundered around the entire unit. I'm sure the staff had never heard worse talk from any convict. The next morning, Pat shaved her head in protest. She said she had heard from Charlie during the night. Charlie told me too, she said simply. Leslie and I followed her action immediately. Reaction came quickly. The superintendent of the prison, Mrs. Carlson, arrived and stood in the corridor facing us. Your little act of rebellion will not get you moved, she said. You seem to think your rights are being violated. Well, let's have an understanding on this. You have a right to 2 meals a day and a shower, and you are to be let out once a day. Anything else is a privilege. Hatred seethed along the 33-foot corridor. Attitudes in SSU deteriorated badly over the next several months as we watched things pass us by. The United States Supreme Court ruled in June, similarly to the state court, that the death penalty violated the Constitution and that the way it was administered was cruel and unusual punishment. But nothing seemed to affect us. We were becoming vegetables, and we knew it. This condition was apparent to all watching us, and one day a light in our tunnel of darkness became visible in the person of a happy, smiling woman named Carlene Faith. She arrived at SSU and met with the 3 of us. I'm from the University of Santa Cruz, she said, and we are offering college courses to residents at CIW, including you. They will be offered with college credit toward a degree. She looked at the 3 of us, who were still showing the effects of vegetating. Do you think you would be interested? Why not? Leslie said. Give us some more information. Carlene, small and frail, smiled her very happy smile. She was in her early 30s. And told us she would be able to bring in other instructors over the months ahead, and we'd be free to study just about anything we wanted. Literature, philosophy, journalism. The cloud of hatred seemed to dissipate a bit, and we agreed we'd like to sign up. As Carlene talked to each of us about our desires and needs, she and I were left alone for several minutes. Carlene, I said softly, my mind is empty. Sometimes confused and messed up, but really empty. And you have an opportunity to teach me anything. I'm like an open vessel. Her smiling face became very serious. I will do my utmost not to abuse your emptiness. I will try not to infringe on your rights to learn and grow. One of the most important courses for me in those early days was one on women's studies. I suddenly found myself free from the male oppression I had so willingly walked into in my middle teen years and had violently sealed in my relationships with Charlie and others in the family. For the first time, I got a view of my sexual degradation. For example, I began to glimpse how I had allowed myself to be domineered in the most primitive fashion by other people. In my drive for freedom, I had entered into the worst bondage possible. I unexpectedly found that I enjoyed reading and writing. My mind began to open up. Philosophy was fascinating, and I read deeply, although my understanding often faltered. Unhappily, I knew deep inside that I was still too dependent on other people. Only this time, they were people like Carlene and another instructor, Jean Gallic. And I was touched by the love and affection of Mrs. Smith, an occupational therapist from the psychiatric treatment unit at the prison, who came twice a week to work with the three of us on handcrafts and sewing. Friendship began to take root in those relationships too, especially with Jackie Christine, a counselor and psychological therapist who came with Carlene. Occasionally the dirt within my existence was scraped away enough for thoughts of goodness and human worth to be considered. These thoughts were nurtured by certain watchwomen and correctional officers who were regular parts of SSU life. Although the freeze from Pat and Leslie toward me showed no signs of thawing, the two of them were revealing signs of easing into thought patterns and mannerisms of individuals, not cultish family drones. Change was coming in them, ever so slowly, although they refused to let me participate in it. One night, I even heard them discussing the possibility that Helter Skelter is not coming down after all.